This exercise is called the 5 interview checkpoint. And this is what you're going to do after you've done 5 interviews. You're going to come back and you're going to do this exercise. Why? Well, because it's going to solve 2 problems for you. The first is it's going to make sure you're doing this right. There's nothing worse than investing hundreds of hours on trying to get interviews, trying to do the interviews, analyze them, only to find out that there was something you should have done in the very beginning to course correct. So that's what we're doing right here. We're nudging and making sure that you're going down the right path to go and validate that there's a real problem here that people are interested in solving. So this is going to make sure, before you invest a whole bunch of time, that you're spending your time in the right way. The second problem it's going to solve, again, it's going to make your whole validation process faster by doing a quick touch point here. It's going to make sure that everything you do is going to be more efficient going forward. It's also going to make sure that that you know exactly what you're doing next, so that in case something isn't quite right, you know exactly where to spend your energy and where to course correct. All right, so let's recap where we were. So previously you set out your interview timeline, and so you're now executing on this phase here. Once you've done that, once you've actually gotten your interviews together, you're going to pull out your 5 interview checkpoint exercise worksheet, and then you're going to fill in your customer segment and the channel that you decided to use to go and get these interviews. Then you're going to simply fill out these columns, one for each interview you've done, and then a row for each problem that came up during that interview. All right, so that's all you're going to capture here. You should have lots of other notes that you're going to set aside, but all we're looking for in this worksheet is the name of the person you interviewed, the problem that they expressed they had, the action they're taking to address that problem, up to 3 problems, and for your 5 interviews. So, show you what that looks like. Interview a guy named James on Facebook who's on Fitbit's Facebook page. Talk to him about his problems. He says, one of my problems is not enough time to exercise. Another problem is finding cheap, healthy food. And then to solve that problem, he tried the Sprout app. So you'll notice here that I only have 2 problems. These were the only 2 problems that came up during the interview. And that there's only one problem that he actually tried to solve. This other one, there isn't anything that he's actively trying to do to solve this problem. So I wrote down the 2 problems and then any actions that were associated with that problem. Second interview, guy named Andre. Again, the first problem he mentions, this is injury prevents him from working out. He's not actively trying to solve. He's got no workout friends, no one to do it with, so he started scheduling some stuff in advance, and he's got no good workout clothes, so he doesn't feel comfortable in his clothing, but he hasn't done anything to solve that problem. All right, so you can see the same. I'll do the same with the other interviews that I've done. And then, after that, we're going to go and fill in the victory again. Your declaration of victory. And the reason is we're going to look back and make sure that the problems that have been outlined here can help you achieve your victory declaration. So I'll throw mine in again, win $1 million in the bank. And now what we're going to do is we're going to fill in this next step area. And how we're going to do that is we're going to look at this grid that you've got put together here, and we're going to ask ourselves some questions about the grid. And based on the answers to those questions, we'll know what to fill into this blank for our next step. All right. So, the first question is, were you able to complete the 5 interviews roughly on schedule? So we got 2 options. Either you were or you weren't. If you weren't able to complete the 5 interviews, assuming you were actually working, assuming you were trying to get them, then you got to pick a new channel. Something's not working in that channel, so go pick your secondary channel or your 3rd channel and try and execute on those and see if you can get some interviews. Now, if it turns out that maybe you weren't working as hard as you should have been and weren't hitting the schedule that you aligned for yourself, just a reminder that the focus framework is called focus for a reason. The way that you are going to validate this business is by focusing your energy at one task at a time. Now, you should be able to go out and get these interviews if you've got a valid channel. You should be able to do that with a moderate amount of work. You shouldn't have to spend more than 40 or 50 hours a week trying to do this. That said, it will take a moderate amount of work. So if you are not focused enough on this one task of acquiring your interviews, it will be difficult to have the conversations you need to validate your business model. All right. So for my case, you saw that I was able to get my 5 interviews. That wasn't a problem. So the next question we're going to answer is, are the customers trying to solve the problems that they bring up? So the way to answer this question is to look at the chart. So what we're going to do here is we're going to actually going to X out any problems that our customers mentioned that don't have actions associated with them. All right, so that means that a problem that isn't trying to be solved is not a problem we're interested in. All right, so what that looks like here, I'm going to go take James's first problem. I'm going to cross that out because he's not trying to do anything. Andre's first problem, Marcos's first problem, Andre's third problem, and Marcos's third problem. So these are all problems that I'm not even going to consider because these people aren't actively taking steps to try and solve them. All right, so I'm now left with a list of problems that people are trying to solve, and then we're going to do a little bit of analysis on there. So this next question is, so are the customers trying to solve problems? If the answer is no, that you're asking people about their problems and they are not doing anything to try and solve them, it's time for you to either to choose a second channel or to find a new segment. Now, how do you know which one? If this is your first time through the iteration, maybe you try a second channel just to see what's going on. Also, just touch base and make sure you're really letting the customer lead the conversation. It's not very often that you can have 5 conversations with people about the challenges they're encountering and have them not be trying to solve those challenges. So it's possible, but this is just a hint that you may be leading them down a path towards a problem that they are not interested in solving. Whereas if you leave it open and let them lead you down the path, they will most likely bring up problems that they are trying to solve. So give it another shot on a secondary channel and see what happens. If you've already done this a couple times with 2 channels, I would highly recommend switching to a new segment. Something's not working here. The segment is not interested in solving a particular problem, so best bet is to move on to a new segment. All right, so if they have, the next thing we're going to ask ourselves is, all right, so if they're trying to solve a problem, is there a problem pattern? Is there a pattern amongst the problems that we're hearing that people are actively trying to solve? And what I'm looking for here is typically 3 out of 5. We're looking for around 60% or more of the people I talk to are all trying to solve the same problem. And trust me, when you start niching in narrowly enough, you will see that there is an eerie similarity between the problems that people have and the problems they're trying to solve. So, so if you're not getting 60% or so of the people you're talking to reporting and trying to act on the same problems, that means that your customer segment is probably not niched enough. So let's take a look at my segment here to answer this question. I'm going to circle the problems, and I recommend you do the same, that people have in common. So in this case, James says he's got a problem finding cheap and healthy food, and he's taken an action. He tried a Sprout. Sprout is a service that delivers food. So he tried this service. So that's an action he's trying to take to solve this problem. Ramphis had a problem where he's not sure what to eat to meet his fitness goals, and so he bought a nutrition app in the App Store. So these are 2 actions. They're taking separate, different actions, but they're trying to solve the same problem. So that's good. That is sort of a pair of problems, but it's only 2 out of the 5 people that I've talked to. So that's not quite enough in my book. Like I said, I'm looking for 3 out of 5 who are actively taking action to try and solve this problem. So there's a hint that there might be something here, but for right now, I'm looking for something more substantive and sort of more all-encompassing, that we see more people exhibiting this behavior. So for me, I'm going to answer that question. Is there a problem pattern? No. And so the next step for me is to go and narrow my segment. So that means that I've talked to lots of people, but I'm not seeing a pattern amongst the problems that are coming out. So I'm going to go narrow my segment. Before I do a bunch more interviews, let me go focus on one customer who I'm most interested in serving and find more people like that. Because there's no point in doing a bunch more interviews if I'm not starting to see a solid pattern. All right, if there was a pattern amongst the problems, then you just ask yourself, is this a problem that you want to solve? Will solving this problem help you achieve your victory? Yeah? If it turns out that the problem that they're having is not one you're interested in solving, it's not one that's going to help you achieve your victory, then the answer is very clear. You got to go find a new segment. There's no point in doing it in a different channel. Let's find a new segment that is going to possibly help you go get your achieve your victory. If it turns out that after 5 interviews, the problem that people are saying is a problem that you can achieve your victory by solving, then great, you're on the right track. Go ahead, do at least 5 more interviews and make sure the pattern still holds. You know? So if you've done your 5 interviews, you found that people are trying to solve problems, there is a pattern amongst the problem that there is a pattern amongst can help you declare your victory, then great, keep on going. Go find yourself some more people to go interview. If the answer is no to any of these questions, you're either going to change your channel, change your segment, or narrow your segment. All right, so in my case, what am I going to do? So I didn't like the pattern that was showing up, so that means that I'm going to go narrow my segment. There wasn't enough of a pattern, so I'm going to narrow my segment. In this case, the segment that I like the best is the one represented by Ramphis here. Like if we look at Ramphis, he's got 3 problems, all of which he's taking action to solve, all of which he's paying money to go solve. So I want to go find more people like Ramphis, and in particular, I want to find people who are exhibiting this behavior here. You know, no one's holding them accountable. They have a Fitbit, but they're still looking for more accountability. So he's hired a personal trainer. So I'm going to pivot my customer segment and narrow in on people like Ramphis. All right. Now, if you think about it, this actually kind of makes sense, right? It's not too surprising that we would find someone like Ramphis during our interviews and decide that maybe this is the type of person that we want to go after. Because if we go back to the scale segment, the hypothesis was that Fitbit owners comparing apps on Product Hunt would be the best segment to go after. But having gone and done the work, done the interviews, it turns out that segment is too broad and is actively it's too broad. It's too broad. It's too broad. So what we want to do is we want to find Fitbit owners who are also having personal trainers, because not only do they exhibit that they are actively trying to solve a problem, it turns out they're actually our second priority segment. Like they were tied for second, so it's not shocking that we would want to go after someone like that. So this represents a pivot. We're going to move our segment slightly from people who are just talking about apps on Product Hunt to people who are overweight with personal trainers and own a Fitbit, ideally. That's kind of the segment we want to focus in on. So we're just going to shift our energy and go towards these people as opposed to continuing our broad segment here focused on people who just own Fitbits and are talking about it online. So we're going to go to people who own Fitbits and have personal trainers. That's sort of where we're going to morph our energy to. All right, and from there, now that we've gone sort of back to the scale exercise, we're going to repeat the process we did earlier. Now we're going to do channel storming again with this particular channel, right? With this particular segment in mind, excuse me. Now the channel storming this time is going to be easier because we've talked to Ramphis and we've asked him where he discovered those solutions. So he's going to give us some more ideas, and we're going to be able to use a lot of the ideas we had before, but we're going to repeat this process and go list out a number of different channels to go talk to more people like Ramphis. We're also going to repeat our channel costing. We're going to go through the process again, figuring out, okay, which of these channels is going to be most effective, and then we're going to go through the asking for interviews process again. We're going to go and give ourselves a deadline to go ask for these interviews. So all we've done is we've made it down to the interviews. We've done our 5 interviews. We found out that, oh, this isn't going down the perfect track, so let's go back, reassess, pick a new, more narrowed segment, and then start again. That is completely normal, and that is exactly part of the process. That's why we have this whole process, to go and catch invalidated hypotheses as early as possible so we don't waste too much time going down a track that's not going to pay off. So this does represent kind of a bittersweet event if it applies to you. Bittersweet because it is kind of a bummer to have to start over, right? Like things were going well, you did some work, you got out of the building, you did your 5 interviews, but now you're going to have to kind of go back a couple steps and start over. So that is a bummer. There's no two ways about it. If you need to go have a beer, if you need to go have a candy bar, if you need to go exercise, whatever you need to do to go make yourself sort of understand and cope that this is a bummer experience, that this is not enjoyable, go for it. Go make it happen, because if you try and ignore it and pretend like it's not a bummer, then it's going to take you longer to sort of get your feet under you again. So we'll talk more about like how to recover from these sort of restarts in the next book. But for right now, know that it is a bummer to start over, but it's way, way, way cheaper to start over now than it is at any other time. And in fact, if you're having to start over, that means you're doing the process right. You're doing it perfectly. And although it's a little sad, you're doing it. This is exactly what it's meant for. So this whole process is meant for you to be able to go out, talk to your customers, understand the real problems they're actively trying to solve, so that if it turns out that they're not trying to solve something that you want to solve for, that you find out now. So the people who do lean best are the ones who have to repeat it themselves the most. Because the people who are sort of cheating their way through it and sort of faking themselves out and pretending like the data's all good, those are the people who are they're going to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. So you're doing something right if you find out that you're having to do something again. Yeah? And it's way more efficient to do this now after only 5 interviews than have to do it later on. All right. So from here, you've seen exactly what the 5-interview checkpoint will do. It's not going to give us an affirmative thumbs up that yes, we're good to go in the segment. All it's going to do is tell us whether or not we should keep interviewing with this segment or whether we should try another segment or another channel to go acquire those interviews. But with this in hand, you should know exactly what to do next and have the confidence to go and do it. All right, so just to wrap up again, the problems that this exercise has solved, are you doing it right? It's going to make sure that you are going down the exact right path and spending your time and energy the most efficiently possible. It's also going to make sure that you get your validation and find your victory faster because you're not wasting a bunch of time interviewing the wrong people. All right, so that is your 5-interview checkpoint. Keep repeating until you find a pattern of problems that you are interested in solving that will help you achieve your victory. Once you do, you are then keep going. Once you find at least 10 of them, you're ready to move on to the next book, and we'll talk about exactly how you know when that's possible in the next exercise.